Welcome, welcome, welcome to Ultimate Options. This is where we start. This is where we rock and roll. I'm Andy Tanner. It's good to be with you. You and I are joined by Corey Halliday. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
I'm so appreciative to have you, Corey, joining us for our Ultimate Options class because you bring so much to the table as a teacher, as a trader experience. And particularly the thing I'm most excited about is you're a wonderful risk manager. So we very much appreciate you, lending your skills and investing in us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's begin. Now, I'm going to harp on the review. We did a bunch of review. This class is an intermediate class. We'll even dip our toe into what I would consider some advanced strategies for most traders. And so, as a person obsessed with simplicity and obsessed with making sure people understand things, it's a huge challenge as a teacher to teach an intermediate class because now you're building on a foundation that should exist. That means we have to make some assumptions. And you know what happens when you make assumptions? You can be very wrong.
Yeah.
And so please understand that if there is some terminology or there's some things I'm using that I'm not defining on the fly, chances are it's because this has been taught somewhere else. So that's the first thing I'll see. The second thing that I'll say is we worked very hard to put this course together. And I taught it in the way I wish that I would have been taught the first time. What happens is everyone wants to go out, and most people, when they learn options the first time, they start with a call option. And, they see the risk graph, and, they see it go like this, and, maybe the timeline on it, might look like that. And they'll see this call option, and they'll learn it this way. And they'll just hop right in an option with no foundation of what can really make you successful with that call option. It's very incomplete, and it's very much putting the cart before the horse. It's like teaching a kid to shoot threes before he can shoot a layup in basketball. It's like teaching someone to hop in and parallel park before they know where the brake and the gas and the gear shift are in a car. So one of the things that the reason people do that is it's like Jerry Maguire, show me the money, show me the money. So this is where I ask for your trust as your teacher, like Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off. What do you mean? I want to go do karate. I want to go fight someone. No, paint the fence, okay? In my opinion, a person shouldn't be trading options, truly. I mean, they might dabble with it, but to get serious about it, you don't trade an option unless you know what a Greek is. If you don't know what the Greeks are, your risk is huge, much bigger. You have much less predictability. You certainly don't know how to delta hedge if you don't know what a Greek is. And I don't do it anymore, but I spent years teaching, doing seminars, selling software, selling courses for people. I spent years doing that. And Corey, I'm going to tell you, it was astounding. It was astounding the amount of people that had been trading options, getting their what kicked, and they've been doing it for years. And I would ask them about a delta or a theta or a vega, and they didn't even know what I was talking about. So while you would like to say, oh, I want to get in the money, show me, I want to trade, hey, let's go. Hey, relax. We're going to dive in. So the very first thing we're going to talk about at the intermediate level is we're going to start with the Greeks. Because it's absolutely, in fact, it's essential we start with the Greeks. And the first Greek we're going to talk about is delta. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, this is really building the foundation for understanding options. And so, one of the basic components of an option is that it's a derivative. So it is not the stock, but the stock movement is going to cause the option to move.
Yep.
And so, it's astounding to me, that story that people would go in and trade it and not know what the delta was, meaning they don't even know how much their option can make, how much it can lose on movement in the stock. And so, the great thing about this course is we're taking the bull by the horns, and we're saying we're not going to get into the strategy first. We're going to make sure that you understand delta and theta and these really crucial, important elements before you even think about going into strategy. And as always, of course, paper trading. Paper trade everything. Practice makes perfect.
We're gonna ask you for your faith in us to go through about 6 or 7 classes before we even get to our first option trade. And there's a reason for this. If a person doesn't know how to use a trading journal, they shouldn't trade it. If a person doesn't understand the mindset of risk, they shouldn't trade it. And for every single solitary strategy we show you, we're not just going to show you how to get into it. It's crazy if we don't show you how to get out of it and how to manage the risk. We can't do that without a knowledge of Greeks. You can't. And so before we do our first Dad Blasted trade call, I'm going to make sure that you have an understanding of these Greeks. Now, the other nice thing is we've had our mentor club for years, and that's an immersion experience. And I believe that's one of the best ways to learn this, but it does take longer. It takes a lot of time. So when you're in the mentor club, we'll be talking about delta and theta vega every time. There's never an episode we don't talk about delta somewhere. And some people pick up what it is. They might not have it totally 100%. They kind of like a language, they learn it. Here in this format, we have to absolutely understand this because we cannot manage the risk to the best of our ability if we don't understand this. So I ask for your patience and I ask for your faith and your trust to take the time to learn these things first before we go crazy and getting into spending money and buying stuff and going nuts. So with that, speaking of risk, this is an education course. If a person doesn't want to trade options, I won't recommend that they do. You guys that have worked with me have seen this disclaimer 10,000 times, but there is risk involved. So one of the things I demand of every student is as you're learning throughout my courses, you practice on paper. You practice in a paper trade account. There's no reward financially to doing that, but there's also no risk. But there's huge rewards educationally and experience-wise in paper trading. Any last thing you want to say from the risk manager before we hop in here and get rolling?
I think we're ready to roll.
All right. So I will say again, we're going to be using words like premium, strike prices, and intrinsic value. If you're not familiar with premium, strike prices, and intrinsic value, please go back and either go back to your 4 Pillars course and learn the options in the cash flow section of the 4 Pillars, or at least go back in this Ultimate Options course and take those 4 or 5 classes that give you a review of options to make sure you have the foundation to understand what we're saying. Now, let me wipe the screen here. And let's do a couple of drawings here. So this is a big deal. Corey said that, we have stock over here, and the stock has a price. Okay, the stock has a price, and this price can go up, this price can go down, this price can get stagnant, stay the same, and that's it. So to trade this, we would go long right here, and we could say, let's go short right here, and there you go, voila. Maybe over time, every quarter, maybe you can get, paid a dividend out here. I don't know how to spell dividend, but I know what one is. And you might get a little dividend out here, every 3 months. Well, 3 months. If it goes sideways, up or down, right? You can at least get the dividend. But that's basically it. I mean, you got to learn entry and exit and target and, maybe some technical analysis and some fundamental analysis, and off your trading stock. Congratulations, you're rocking and rolling. Okay, an option is not a stock. Okay, an option is a derivative of the stock. And that's a tough word because it's a big freaking fancy word. So think of it this way. Orange juice is different than an orange. Okay, oranges are solid. If I slice up an orange and put it on the counter, it'll retain its shape. Orange juice needs a glass to retain its shape because it's liquid. So that's one big difference. That orange juice is solid and orange juice is liquid and orange is solid. But orange juice is a derivative of an orange. In other words, it grows out from its orange. So we would call the orange juice the derivative, and what we call the word for the orange would be the underlying. In other words, there's this underlying source. Well, here's the thing. If I pick that orange at the perfect time and then I squeeze it, my orange juice is going to taste awesome. But if I pick that orange too early or I pick that orange too late, my orange juice is going to be either really, really nasty on the unripe side or really nasty on the too ripe side. If I have a crappy orange tree, I have a crummy orange, and the orange has been, hurt, affected by insects, and that affects the derivative. So the quality of this stock, they're always going to be linked together. Okay, they're always going to be chained and linked together. That how this thing is, it's going to affect this thing. Now we know an option is much like owning the stock. It's much like owning the stock in a call option because we have the right to buy it anytime we want. So if you have the right to buy it anytime you want, that's very similar to owning it. We might not get a dividend if we don't own it. But the difference is in a call option is as this thing rises, if you've got a strike that's lower, it's almost as if you own the stock, right, Corey?
That's right.
So
the option's going to move with the stock. It's going to have a certain amount of movement, which we'll touch on the amount of delta that it has. But if you own a strike that's below, which we'll get to, it's a high delta, it's going to mirror the stock very closely. Some of the options won't, and we'll touch on why.
So the price of this stock, is going to affect the value of the option. If the price moves, if the stock price moves, then that's going to equate to the option price moving. If this stock price moves, it can move and affect the option price. If the stock price moves, the options price moves. If the orange tree is no good, if the orange tree is not ripe, then the orange juice isn't ripe. If the orange tree, the oranges are too ripe, then the orange juice is going to taste too ripe. So they affect each other, and one can't move without affecting the other. Now the other thing though is stocks don't have an expiration date. The only way they die is if they go bankrupt. If the company goes bankrupt, the stock dies. But there's not a date on that. It's a lot like you and me. We know we're going to die someday, but there's not a date that we can peg. Well, here there is. So there is an element of time. And of course, like an insurance contract, the more time you have, the more valuable this option is. So as the time ticks away, right, this is called time decay. As the time ticks away, the option price moves. Whoops, that's going to change, or we might use change here, right? The option price changes. So here the option price, and equate a movement in the time means the option price will move as well. And then of course we have volatility. I have no idea how to spell volatility.
Lots of I's.
Volatility. Yep. That's pretty darn close. If there's a change in volatility, or a move in the volatility, then that's also going to equate to the option price moving. So there we go. And we'll talk about some of the other Greeks as we go along, rho and whatever, gamma. But those are the big three. And we're going to talk about all of them in this course, but this is the start where we start on this stuff. Is, we have changes in price, we have changes in time, and we have changes in volatility. Those three right there.
And one of the things that you often say is there's only one of those that always moves in one direction, right?
Yeah,
price
time.
can move in either direction. Volatility can move in either direction, meaning you can have an increase or a decrease in volatility, but time never goes backwards. Time is always moving towards expiration. So it always has a decaying effect on the option. Whereas with the others, it could cause the option price to increase, or it could cause the option price to decrease. Time decay is always a deduction of value.
Now, here's what's interesting is stocks are a lot like people. There's no two that are the same. It's like a fingerprint. There's no two that are the same. And so, I have two sons, and one of them is a rule keeper. I couldn't get that kid he's like his mother. That kid wouldn't break a rule if his life depended on it. One night we were at a hotel. He and I, we actually went down for Robert Kiyosaki's birthday party, and my son loves Robert. And so I took him down to Robert's birthday party, and we flew down to Phoenix, and my wife and my other son had an engagement with her family, and so I said, let me steal Zach, and we'll go down to Robert. And we got in the and I wanted to get in the hot tub, and it was closed. It closed at 10 o'clock. The party went late, and we took off about 10 and got to our hotel room about 10 o'clock, and the hot tub and the pool was closed. I says, hey, son, let's sneak in the hot tub. And the manager's right there listening to me. He knows I'm going to sneak in, right? He sees this is kind of a fun father-son thing. The manager's right there overhearing me. He's winking at me. I go, let's sneak in, dude. And my son wouldn't do it. He's like, no, Dad, it's against the rules. Won't do it. And it took me 15 minutes to convince him to go in. And we heard a couple maintenance guys around. I go, dude, I think that's security. Let's run. So we grabbed our towels. We're running through the thing, and we get in the hotel. And of course, the manager knows, it's a total farce. And I go, son, was that just amazing? He goes, Dad, I feel like I robbed a bank. Okay, he will not break a rule. Okay. My other son, I can't get him to keep a rule. So I have to communicate with them differently. I have to speak to them differently. Well, stocks are the same way. Stocks have different behaviors, different personalities. Procter & Gamble is not Tesla, right? Procter & Gamble is not Tesla. And so the way time affects it as it ticks away, the way price affects it as it ticks away, and the way volatility affects it as it changes is going to really change. Well, we can measure this stuff. We can get an idea and some metrics that help us give us a little bit more power in our predictions and our forecasts by understanding, and these metrics, this understanding how price affects this stock or this option, and how time affects this particular option, how volatility is going to affect this particular option, is a lot like getting to know the personality of the stock, just like I understand the personality of my sons. I can't guarantee I know how Zach will react to a certain situation. I can't guarantee I know how David will react to a certain situation, but you know what? I do have a sense of those kids, and I have because I understand their personalities, it does help me get a better idea how they probably will act in a certain situation, right? How they'll probably perform in a piano recital, how they'll probably react to a loss in a basketball game. I can get a better idea of that. And without that, if we have this knowledge, to begin to talk about trading options without understanding this, to me, is mind-boggling. And yet there are thousands. I'm telling you right now, Corey, I've been out there. There's thousands of people that trade their first stock. I would say the majority, I don't know, I don't data on it, but I would guess the majority of people go out and they trade their options and get all into these puts and calls first without this foundation. So with that said, we're going to do we're actually going to do more than three, but this is the first three we're going to do. We're going to do price first. And so how does a change in price affect the premium of a stock? In other words, if this is the stock this is our orange tree, right? And this orange tree starts to get ripe. How does that affect the price of the option? Just because this goes from 90 to maybe, 93 here, this is a $3 increase in the stock. Well, if in the price, so this went from 90 to 93. Okay, that's in the stock. Well, how does this going to affect the price of the option? Right? Am I going to get a $3 change in the option? Maybe, maybe not, right? I need to, because of how these other factors of time decay, of price, work. So how does the price affect the premium? Well, to figure that out, we use a metric called delta. And the delta is very simple, and this would be a great quiz question, Corey. The delta helps us understand sensitivity to price changes. Let me say that again. The delta helps us understand sensitivity to price changes. So let's do an example here, and it's really about a $1 move, or what we might say the first, F-I-R-S-T, the first dollar move of the stock. So let's do an example of this so we get this down really, really well. Let's say, Corey, that the share price, give me a share price, about $100. Nice even number. $100 right here. And let's say the option premium is maybe, I don't know, like $5. Would that be okay with you? $5?
Sure.
Okay, so
perfectly
$5
reasonable
for, maybe it's a 2-month option or something like that. Okay, so it's $5. Okay, so what the delta helps me predict a little bit, and it's not perfect. It's not like it's guaranteed in stone, money back guarantee, but the delta says, look, if this price moves up, okay, if this price moves up to $101, then I could very well expect pretty close to a 56-cent move in that first dollar change. So then I would predict that my option premium would now go to $5.56. Okay.
Now notice on this, the share price went up, and you can think of the share price as 100%, right?
Right.
When you own stock shares, you make 100% of the upside, but you also lose 100% of the downside. The delta is basically a percentage. So you can think of it as, well, the stock went up a full $1, but we made 56 cents on the dollar, or we made 56% of the move is, a couple of ways you can think about that.
And speaking of percentage, here's an important thing to make. If I buy a stock at 100 and it goes to 101, I have a 1% return. In other words, if I buy the stock at 100 and I sell the stock at 101, I just made $1. That's a 1% return. But if I buy the option at $5 and I can sell that option at $5.56, I just made like a 10.6% return.
About 11% or whatnot.
Whatever it is, yeah. So think about that. That's why options are exciting that way. However, if that stock goes down $1 to 99, and this is why we have Corey here to do this math, this is going to fall to $4.44, I'm guessing. Is that right?
Exactly.
That's probably bad math, right? I don't know. I stink at math. So if you don't like math and you're not good at it, join the Andy Tanner Math Club. I'll tell you that right now. I got a calculator on my desk all the time.
Yeah, notice what he did there is just a reduction. So stock price went down $1. Your option value was reduced by 56 cents by the delta amount. So this is the sensitivity to a $1 share price move in the underlying. And that's both good or bad, right? In this case, you can think of this in two different ways. If I own the stock, I make 100% of the upside or I lose 100% of the downside. In this example, this is a call option, so you would have made 56 cents on a $1 increase, but you lost 56 cents on the $1 decrease. So it's the sensitivity to the share price move.
So I lose the whole dollar here. I lose the whole dollar here on a $1 move. Here I'm losing 56 cents. Here I'm gaining a full dollar on a $1 move. Here I'm gaining 56 cents. However, the amount of money I'm risking, this is why options are considered more risky than stocks in a way. Now this is interesting. Because of the percent changes. Now, by volume, what's interesting is if this company goes bankrupt, I can lose $100. The most I can lose here is $5. So from a standpoint of money invested, here I've invested $100 that I could lose if the company goes bankrupt. Here I've invested $5 if the company goes bankrupt, because I don't have to buy the stock, assuming this is a call option, right? Assuming this is a call option. So this right here would be the delta of a call option. Isn't that right, Corey?
That's right. And so you can think of that option premium you paid $5 for. You've invested 5% as much money as the stock example. So risk, that's a great point. Risk can be looked at in two different ways. Risk is much higher in owning the shares on a total amount of dollars at risk, right? Yes. Much higher. However, the percentages gained and lost in the option are bigger. Yep. Higher risk in percentage terms, because that underlying move, you only made 1% or you lost 1% in the stock. With the option, it's moving about 11% of what you paid. Up or down. You could have made 11% on the increase, but you could have lost 11% of your invested capital on the decrease.
It is very hard to lose this $100, because to lose this $100, this company has to go bankrupt. So to take a 100% loss is, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very unlikely that if I buy, some $100 stock in a large cap market, that it's going to go bankrupt before this option expires. It takes almost nothing for this option if this thing drops down, and now my $100 strike call is now out of the money. This is now going to tick away. This is all time decay right here. So we'll talk about that. But this is why it's important you start on a foundation. So if I'm using words like $100 strike and you don't get that, time to go back and review, right? Now, should we do the put option as well?
Let's do it.
So here, let's say I have a $100 put option. Let's say the delta is still 56, okay? So maybe maybe the put option is more expensive. Maybe it's going for $6. Is that fair enough, Corey? We'll say the put's going for $6. The downside is usually a little bit more expensive, slightly, not much. And let's say this thing goes down 100. Well, on the puts, the delta is going to be what, Corey?
Yeah, so it's going to have a negative delta. So if that stock goes from 100 down to 99, perfect. How much does your put increase in value? And you can kind of think of it in terms of the double negatives, but the stock price went down, it's a share price decline, your delta has a negative, two negatives make a positive. Well, the simple point is you can just think of it in reverse, in that your put option is the right to sell. Now, when we talk about the right to sell, very important that you understand, because you're locking in a sell price at one level, the further it drops, the better for your put option that you own. So that the stock price going down actually causes puts to go up in value. But as Andy's shown here, if the stock price had gone up, you can assume that you would lose around the delta amount of the option. So notice $6 increased to $6.56, the delta amount on the drop, but it decreased. It was a decline in the option value from 6 to 544, on the increase in the share price. So it moves in the opposite direction.
That's what, so just think of the opposite direction. Deltas on puts, we have a negative here, and the delta on the call, we have a positive here. So the most important part of this lesson is to understand that we can look at the delta, thus far the most important part, we can look at the delta as a sensitivity. How sensitive is this to price change? If we had a delta of 90, right, then this would go from $5 to $5.90 or $4.10 if we had a delta of 90. Okay, if we have a delta of 1, then we're at dollar for dollar. And we'll talk about that, where it gets to that point in just a moment. But for now, the most important thing, let's get back into theater mode here. For now, the most important thing is to understand that delta is a sensitivity to share price. If I have a $100 stock or anything, I could have a $47 stock, and the option premium, let's say, is I don't know, maybe $2 right here, $2. If it's a call option and we have a positive delta, okay, of 56, well, it could be maybe 20 cents, right? If it goes to 48, then I'd have $2.20 most likely. If it dropped to 46, I'd have $1.80 most likely. So delta tells us, and it measures how much the option premium will likely change with a $1 move in that underlying stock. Okay. Anything else you want to say about that, Corey?
Yeah, I think in terms of delta, the simplified approach is just think about it in terms of how sensitive it is to the stock price move. So sometimes we'll get questions, if my stock goes up 50 cents, how much would it change in value, right? Well, if it's 50 cents, it moved half of the dollar, you're going to get half of the delta, and you can even multiply the two. A simplified approach is, well, if it moved 50 cents times the delta of 20 cents would give you a 10-cent gain. You made half of the delta amount because it moved half of the dollar. So we'll go through more examples of that as we go, but just remember price sensitivity of the option to any share price movement in the stock.
Now, where do you get this information from is the next question. Well, how do I find the delta? Well, when you have a brokerage account, they'll have several different ways to do this. You can do it through the web, and they'll have what's called an option chain. So one of the best places to find out what the delta is, and it's always updated, is on an option chain. And this is one of the reasons an option chain, makes people crazy, is because there's so much data on here. But right here, I see on the put side, I can see a delta, right? And over here, I see delta on the call side. And so at this stock at 211, I know that in a $1 move, it's gonna if it goes up $1, I'm gonna gain 49 cents. If it drops the first dollar, I'm gonna gain, or I'm gonna lose, or if it drops $1, I'm gonna gain 49 cents. If it increases $1, I'm gonna lose 49 cents because it's negative. It's on the put side. And what I decided to do is, in the Mentor Club, since it's a week-to-week experience, I have to choose a platform to get this from. And people all over the world use different platforms. And this is important. People ask me what the best platform is. It really is about preference. That's like asking me what is the best brand of truck. Now, I might say Chevy, and then all the Ford people freak out. They're ready to get pitchforks and torches and say, Chevy's the best? Are you kidding me? Ford's the best. Now, if you're on Mars and you're looking at these primitive little trucks, if you're up in your spaceship, from Mars looking down on us with this high-tech, Independence Day, let's go blow up Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum spaceship, you're looking at our little toy trucks, it's pretty much the same. they're going to see a Ford and a Chevy is pretty much saying, look, it's okay, they both have four wheels, they both have a windshield, they both have a rear view mirror, they both have a gear shift, they both have a reverse drive, four-wheel drive modes, they both have two headlights, they both have this blinker thing because apparently they don't have telepathy when we turn, and we don't know why the human beings would put the blinker on there because they don't use them all the time. It's kind of intermittent on that. And they're saying, look, a Ford and a Chevy is the same freaking thing. They don't even see a difference. And yet we might see, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Ford and the Dodge people are just aggravated right now that I haven't talked to them, and the Toyota Tacoma people are, abrogated, and so now we have to have political correctness when we talk about trucks to make sure everyone's happy. It's hilarious. So I'm going to say the same thing about software right now. If you use Options Express, Options House, Think or Swim, TD Ameritrade, Yahoo Finance for free, whatever, option chain data is going to be the same. You're going to get the same data no matter what. So we've decided in this series to try to do everything generically, to not say, oh, here's how a Ford truck works, because the Ford might have the CD player in a different place than the Dodge, and the Dodge might have the windshield wiper switch on a different place than the Ford. We're going to show you basically how to drive a truck, and then you can choose which type of truck you want to drive. So let's look at an option chain with Delta on it. And of course, these are going to get more complex as you add. It doesn't get more complex. It just looks more complex. As we add more and more Greeks to this, it will get bigger. But we're going to break this down, and we're just going to take this one column at a time here, one column at a time, and break this down to make it simple. So here we have really three pieces of information. We have a strike price. You should already understand that. If you don't know what these numbers mean, you have to go back and review the review section or 4 pillars. Okay. You should know what a mark is right now. And now we're introducing something called the delta. Whoop! I just had my. Let's get that back up. We don't like crashes. I just had happen, Corey. My pen tool. I have the coolest pen tool. People always ask me, Andy, how do you write on this screen? How do you do all this stuff? Well, every once in a while, that pen tool, it's awesome to use, but it's not the most stable, I'll tell you that. So let's see if we can.
Well, when it crashes, you want to own puts on it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
When it's working well, you own some calls.
Yeah. Okay, so check this out right here. So we're doing delta. So let's hit the call side first, and let's break this down one at a time. Now, this can get confusing to people because there's all these different strike prices, and you're in one part of your mind, you're thinking about, if you get a strike at 100, you're thinking about the movement of the stock, right? This does not represent stock movement. We're going to take these one at a time. Watch. Okay, so watch this. We have a $100 strike call, okay? And that means we have the right to buy it at $100. Now, we know that the stock price is $100.52. That's the underlying. Okay, this is called the underlying. Okay, the underlying. So we know it's at $100.52. So if this goes to $101.52, a $1 move, if it goes to $101.52, well, we know that the mark right here is probably the price we can get for this option, right? If you don't know what the mark is, again, you have to go review. But that's going to be the midpoint between the bid price and the ask price. So if I can get this thing for $282 right here, okay, my question is, with a $1 move, right, from $152 to $101.52, what does that do in a $1 move, Corey? Well, I'm going to add 56 cents because that's what the delta is. So I should expect to have $3 and what is that?
38 cents.
38 cents because
Yep.
It's going from $282 up 56 cents. So $3.38 is how much I should make in my option. This is very, very important because higher deltas, as you'll see, pay better. You'll see this. Higher deltas pay better. And so it's kind of this game we're going to begin to discover with less money put in, but highest delta possible. And that's the game we're going to play. The reason we're buying the option, if we're a buyer, is we don't want to spend $152 to control it. We only want to spend $2.82 to control it. So it's easy to predict how much we make in a $1 move here. Well, we make $1, right? 152 to 101.52, we make $1. That's easy to predict. But to predict how much we're going to make if it moves with this option, we need to have a delta to tell us what that number is going to be. So
that's right. And so you can think of this in terms of the delta is, again, how much you make. It's cents on the dollar. So we made 56 cents on the $1 move. Let's compare two workers. If you had two workers that were, both doing work, one might be getting paid $1 an hour. The other is getting paid 56 cents per hour, right? Yeah. That's kind of the concept here is the stock went up $1 in value, but our option is changing by the delta amount. So we make 56 cents on the dollar in that example.
It's very, very good analogy. I like that analogy. Another one might be, choosing a basketball player. LeBron James is going to give me some nice point production. That if I get him on my team, his point production per minute played is going to be higher than, some other player. But it's going to cost me more. So the idea is to balance how much I'm going to pay for LeBron James, but how much point production he's going to give me. What's he worth to my franchise in terms of ticket sales? What's he worth to my franchise in terms of merchandise sales and TV contracts and stuff like that? What's he worth to my franchise? And it's hard to know that, right? How do you know how much? You might not know how many points he's going to score, but how do you know, what a player is worth to the franchise? How do you know how much, ticket sales he'll bring in if I pay a contract? Well, Delta tells us that with options. Delta tells us exactly, how much we're going to make with a $1 move in that stock. Now, if we go down to 99 here and 52 cents, down that $1 move, well, now we've got to do some math here. We got to subtract 56 cents from this 282, don't we? So that's going to be $2 minus 56. What is that? 26?
26. Yep.
Is that right? The math, who knows?
So we paid $2.82 for this option, right? We were expecting it to go up in value. Unfortunately, LeBron sprained his ankle. So how much did we lose on that contract that we own while he's on injured reserve? All of a sudden, ticket sales went down or whatnot. This is the price sensitivity of our option to the underlying move. Well, if the underlying dropped in value by $1, we lost 56 cents on the dollar. That's exactly what that delta shows you.
Now I'm gonna pull out of our theater mode here, and we're just gonna look at this in a different way. Okay, I'm gonna move this out. I'm gonna take a picture of this. I'm gonna show you something. We're gonna save this. So we're going to take a little picture of this, and we're just going to save it right over here. In fact, before we take a picture of it, let's do a little math here. Let's say we had a $1 move in this stock, shall we? Let's pretend we had a $1 move in this stock. So our profit was 56 cents, correct?
That's right.
Our profit was 56 cents. Now let's do a little math right here, okay, just for fun. Where in the heck is my calculator here? Let me bring up a calculator for everyone so we can get this semi-close. So here's my calculator. So let's do this right here. 56 cents was my profit, and I'm going to divide that by $2.80. Whoop, and I'm already screwing that up. 56 cents is my profit. Going to divide that by $2.82 that I paid for the option, and I've now got a profit of 19.85%. Let's write that down. 19.85% profit. Put that in green. A 19.85% profit. Now let's take a picture of that right here, okay? And boom. So we now know how profitable this would be at a $100 strike. So let's just take this and now we got a picture of it right here. So I'm going to pull this off the screen and just kind of save it over on my other screen. And now we're going to look at something that's really interesting. So let's go back to theater mode. Okay, now let's do this. Now let's decide what would happen if we bought an in the money, or excuse me,
an out of the
money call. Okay, an out of the money call right here. So right here, this is an out of the money, and if you don't know what out of the money means, got to go back and review, because you should know that before you started this course. So here we have $100.52 priceless stock. We want the choice to buy it at 105. So this call means we have the right or the choice to buy this at $105. That's what we have here in this call. Maybe I should write that on the call side so people don't get confused, and we'll put it in green. So we have the right to buy this stock at, XYZ stock at 105. So that's what this one is right here, 105. Now watch this. Here the stock is still trading at the same price. It's trading at 152. Do you understand this relationship? The stock price is still the same. I'm just choosing a different option. Does that make sense? Stock price isn't at 105. Stock price is still at 152. But I'm saying I think it's going to go to 120, 130, 140. But let's see how much this option would increase with just a $1 move. So it says here that I can get it for 95 cents, right? I can get this option for 95 cents right here. Okay, let's say it goes from 101 to 101, or to 152 to 101.52, a $1 move in the stock. Okay, well, this delta is 26, right, Corey? It's 26. Right. And so that's less of a move. So I would now have $1, and what is that going to be?
21.
21. Yep, $1.21 is how much I would make on that. So I went from 95 to $1.21. Now, if this stock were to fall $1 to 99.52, this is the stock, right? And this is the option price, right? The premium. Now I'm going to lose 26 cents, right? So 95 cents minus
69.
26 is 69 cents. So I put in 95 and now I have 69, okay? Now watch this. Let's say it went up. Let's say it went up this way. So let's get the calculator out again. Let's get out of theater mode. And let's move this over. And let's get the calculator out again. And let's say that I got 26 cents out of this in this first dollar move. So 0.26 divided by 0.95 is what I put in, right, Corey?
That's right.
And so look at this right here. Right here, I have a 27.37, round that up. I have that's not that. That's a percent.
That's a percent. Yep.
So I have a profit in this one of 23.2% if I do the 105 strike call. But remember, we had a profit of 19.85% on the on this. Now, why is that? Well, the delta over here was lower. It was only 26 cent delta, right? but the amount of money I put in to buy that option was much, 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 much less. Okay, now someone's going to get all excited about that, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy this one, every single time. Well, just understand that stock, this is still all over on this one. All of this profit is still time value. Okay, that's the thing to understand. All of that profit is time value, because it still is it's still out of the money on this one. Right, Corey? My option is still all the money. So if I hold that to expiration, that profit will eventually melt away. Okay, on this one though, if it goes up $1, I'm in the money by 52 cents. I'm in the money. So this is kind of the game you play. What do you say about this, Corey?
Yeah, so this is a great example. Notice the difference in sensitivity. So if we said, well, which one's most sensitive? Then it's the higher delta position, right? Because a 56 delta means you're making 56 cents on the dollar versus a 26 delta, which means you're making 26 cents on the dollar. But, and you showed it perfectly, the percentage gained or return on investment was actually higher for the other one because we put less capital in. Does putting less capital into the trade, though, mean it's the best trade? And you really described that perfectly, which is it's actually the higher risk, higher reward way of trading. If you're buying these, if you're comparing the two call options, yes, your percentage return was higher, but you need more things to go right. You need the stock to continue to move up from now and continue to go, unless you're going to dump those calls really quickly. They're very sensitive to time decay and some other elements that we're going to get to. So you have to kind of look at this in terms of risk and reward, not only in terms of percentages, which we looked at, but also what's the probability of my option expiring worthless, some of those factors, which Delta also tells us. We're going to get to that information as well.
Yeah.
The probability of success, the probability of this ending up in the money at expiration is much, much lower for a 105 call, because remember, it's the right to buy at 105 and the stock's still not there. It's still an out of the money call option.
So I will say this. This is an intermediate level class, see? And I'm going to just ask right now, should you know this stuff before you trade options? Before we get all excited about going out and buying our first call option, is this stuff that people should know before they start to trade? When I took my first class, they said, well, this is a call option. We started looking at calls and making money, and we got all excited, and oh my gosh, we have leverage, and there's no debt, blah, blah. Wait a minute. It was a long time. I traded options before I learned this. Okay, I was taught at a great instructor, but I did not know what a delta was when I traded my first option. And I will not let that happen to any of my students with this course. So can you see why we would want to get a grasp of this? And we want to go slow and make sure. So here's the lesson. If you're a little bit foggy and, oh my gosh, this is complex, relax. I'm always going to take great care of you. You know that. Look, just because it looks like I have more profit here than I have more profit here, it doesn't necessarily mean this is the best option to trade, because there are other factors. Now, we're going to learn more about what those factors are, but just relax. The lesson is, just because one of them looks like it makes you more money than the other, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the best one to trade. So let's take some pictures of all of these so we can have them, Corey, if I can do this without screwing it up. Okay. Let's take a picture of the one we did at 105 and its profit. Click, and we'll save that so we can look at it and compare later on. Okay. Let's also take a picture of the one we did here at 100. right? And let's save that as well. Okay, let's just put that over here off to the side. So now we can compare. We can get rid of this now. Now we can compare these anytime we want, one to the other, right? This one versus this one, we can compare them. The right to buy at 105 and the right to buy at 100 with a $1 move from that 152 price. This is how much I would go from 282 on this option, and I would go from 95 to 121 on this option. This one has a 27% profit. This one has a 19% profit. However, just understand that time is decaying all the time. And that this one, think about this. If I were to exercise this option, I have a $100 strike. Well, I have $1.52 of what we call intrinsic value in this. I have $1.52. So at expiration day, notice if I can buy at 100 and the stock's at 152, at expiration, this is what it is right now with time in it. That's why we absolutely have to understand that time decay section. So if you're confused right now, you really need to go back to the review section and understand time decay, because this has $1.52 of intrinsic value, and the rest of it is time value. Isn't that right, Corey?
That's right.
So if it has $1.52 of intrinsic, how much time value is that? Should we do the math on it? Just for fun?
Yeah, it looks like that's 186, I believe.
You're so good. We'll do it for everyone's benefit. $3.38, subtracting the 152 that we know is intrinsic value. 152 gives us $1.86. Is that right?
Yep, $1.86 of remaining time value.
So right here we have $1.86 in time value, right? And we have $1.52 in intrinsic value. So at expiration out here, this option would be worth $1.52 to us. So we've got some meat in this one, right? We got some intrinsic value in this. We got a little meat in this one, right? Okay, now watch this. Over here, we have an option that is worth $1.21, okay? Now, if we have the right to buy at 105 and the stock's only here at 101, at expiration, is that going to be cool to pay $1.05 for a stock that's only $1.52? Can I brag about that? Again, if you don't understand what we're talking about right now, please go back and do the options review and your 4 pillars, because this is an intermediate class. You should know this. Is it cool to brag and say, oh, yeah, I can buy this at 105? Well, now it's only at 101, and there's no potential left. There's no time for it to get above 105 now. Now, back here, this is worth $1.21 because it's still got a chance to go above 105. We're still not at expiration yet. So how much intrinsic value is in this option? Well, there's zero. There is zero intrinsic value, absolutely zero. Okay. So the time value is $1.21. So when this goes to expiration, like over here, when this goes to expiration, this option we were with zero. So what I'm saying is yeah, in a first dollar move, on the first couple days, fantastic. It's going up. It's got a bigger profit. But just understand that you'd have to have this happen faster. You'd have to have this happen faster than over here, and there's no intrinsic value. Is there anything you want to say about that, Corey?
Yeah, maybe one last point would be, what if the stock were to just finish right here at 101.52 at expiration? If it were to finish here, you would take a 100% loss owning the 105 calls. They would end up out of the money. They would expire. You paid the 95 cents. Remember, that was your original cost basis, was 95 cents. So they expire, 100% loss.
100%
over
loss.
Here,
zero.
Yep. over here, we still get the 152 that it's in the money back, right? We can sell our option on expiration. It will still be worth its intrinsic value. So assuming the stock were to finish at 101.52, we'd sell our calls back at $1.52. Well, we originally paid what? Well, we paid the 282. So did we take a 100% loss?
Nope.
No. We took a loss in this example because the stock did not go up as expected. It did not continue to accelerate as expected. We sat in the option and there was a lot of time value. Remember that 186 up there? Yeah. It would continue to erode over and over again, day after day, until finally the time value ends up at 0 at expiration. So we get the 152 back. Well, we paid 282 for it. We're going to take a loss of the difference, and 282 minus 152 is $1.30 loss. So in percentage terms, we lost $1.30 on our 282 investment. And I've got a calculator here. I can't do that in my head.
You're cheating.
46%.
The great Corey, wait a minute. The great Corey Halliday using a calculator. Oh my gosh, This is awesome. So what's
46% loss.
So we have a 46% loss. So you can see right here, 46% loss. You can see right here that trading options has a lot more to it than just trading stock, okay? And to get good at this, trust yourself. Now, there's a reason that we are going to be, the plan is to release these courses a little bit a week at a time, a week at a time, a week at a time, because it doesn't make sense to build on this foundation unless it's solid. So if you're not solid on this, and then we go into time decay, then you're going to struggle. So what I'm going to ask of you is to do this the right way. Wax on, wax off, patience, Daniel-san. The problem with freaking Daniel-san and the Karate Kid is he wanted to fight tomorrow. And you say, well, I want to fight tomorrow. I want to fight tomorrow. Okay, look. I say you do, right? No question. When Daniel-san made the pact with Mr. Miyagi, he said, I teach you karate. You karate, I teach. I say you do. No question. And Daniel says, but I want to, blah, blah. He says, remember, no question. Remember deal, right? No question. And so he says, sand the floor, paint the fence. And he had to take all this time. And here's an important thing. Tree rings come once a year. Tree rings come once a year. You can water that thing. You can talk to your plant. You can talk to your tree. You can dig about it. You can dung it. You can fertilize it. You can dig about it. But tree rings come once a year. Okay, look, your tree rings are going to come once a week. There's going to be plenty of money. There's going to be plenty of opportunity. There's going to be plenty of time. But what I'm going to ask of you is to take some time and practice trading in a paper account and watching the delta as just the delta component as time goes on and as the stock moves. So you gain some experience with delta, get it absolutely solid to where there's absolutely no question about what's happening in this lesson, okay, in your mind. Okay, let's go back. Let's pull these off. We'll come back to them again. Let's go back in theater mode. And I'd rather be accused of going too slow and accused of being too detailed than not detailed enough. Let's notice this, that and we won't do these examples because it'd be redundant, but you can see that the price of the option, the option premium, the mark right here, okay, this is the option premium, the mark right here, as I get further and further out of the money, as I get further and further away from the underlying trading price, the chances of this going to 110 are getting smaller and smaller. And notice this, time, okay, is potential. Time is potential. In other words, when I buy time, I'm really buying potential. I'm saying, look, I think it could go big, and I'm hoping that the potential of this is good, so I'm just going to buy time to see how this works out. I'm just buying time. When you're trying to buy time, you've heard that expression, hey, I got to buy me some time. So when you buy time, that's exactly what you're doing. You're buying potential. So the potential for it to go to 105 in 1 month, let's just say, and the potential to go to 110 in 1 month is different, isn't it? It's totally different. Now, the time is the same, but the chances of it going to 110 are much, much less than the chances of it going to 105, right? The chances of it going to 110 are much, much less than the chances of it going to 105. The chances of it staying in the money at 100 are much, much higher than the chances of it getting to 110. So when you look at the time value of these options, when you look at the time value, it's going to be the time's worth less because the potential is less. In other words, the potential of this going from 100 to 110 is there, but it's got much less potential to get there than it has to 105, right? Let me explain it this way. My son has much less of a chance to get to the NBA than he has to get in and play in college. And he has less of a chance to play in college than he can in playing in high school. And he has, maybe less of a chance of making the All-Star team than making his father's team. His father's team, he's got a 100% chance of making because he's my son. He's got a 100% chance of making that team. That's why I coach it. I'm not stupid. But if I wanted to buy, watch this. If I wanted to buy 10 years of time, or 5, let's say I wanted to buy. He's 12 now. Let's say I want to buy 6 years of time until he's 18. Okay, now LeBron James started playing the NBA when he was 18 years old, and so did Kobe Bryant, right? And so I say, okay, I'm going to buy 7 years. The chances of my son getting the NBA in 7 years are very, very small. The chances of him getting him into college are a little bit better than that. The chances of him getting and playing basketball in high school are really good, actually, in that. And the chances of him being on my team are 100%. So the further out we go, okay, with strike prices, the further out we go, the cheaper the time becomes. And the less of a reward we'll get, because if we buy this at 6 cents, right, our delta is going to be 2. So now at this $120 strike, okay, we got 152 here, right? If this goes to 101.52, okay, then what is going to be the new premium? It's going to be 8 cents. First one I didn't need a calculator for because it's only going to grow 2 cents, okay? And the reason that these get smaller and smaller is just that the chances of this expiring, I could certainly trade it if this happens before then. But I'm going to just tell you right here is this is more like a lottery ticket, because the chances of this becoming really valuable at expiration are really, 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 really small, and there's just not much here to be done. So the temptation is, what you're learning here is the temptation from a return on investment standpoint is to kind of start going this way because you don't have very much money to lose, and that seems to be. But I'm going to tell you that if we go this way, okay, let's go this way on it now. Let's do one here, and let's just go one strike into the money, Corey. Okay, let's just go one strike into the money, and let's put the stock at 101. Or excuse me, 152. So this is going to be right here, the right. Whoop, I'm not spelling right. The right to buy XYZ at $95. Okay, so here's the stock. So we'll put that down. Here's the stock price. And here is the option premium, if we want to go the option route, okay? Okay, so let's look at this.
And you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of the trader right here. Which option would you most like to own? Now you might say, like Andy said, I could buy the 120 call out there. It costs almost nothing, only 6 cents per contract. Well, the reality is you kind of get what you pay for. There's very, very little chance the stock's going to end up above 120, and that option's going to be worth anything at expiration. So you'd have to really thread the needle and get in and out very effectively to make any money on that option. And usually those are the lottery tickets. They don't come through. I'd much rather buy something like the 95 strike call. Yes, I have to put more capital in it. I'm putting $625 per contract, or I'm paying the $625.
But
right?
don't be so freaking cheap. Look, you could pay $100 for the stock. You're getting control for 6% of that.
That's right.
Quit being
I'm putting
$100 or 6. Okay. Well, I want 10 cents. Don't be a cheap lottery person.
Yeah.
Right.
And importantly, we're putting $625 in this option. We're making much more money if we're right. Because think about cents on the dollar. This option has an 83 delta. So we're making 83 cents on the dollar. So on a dollar for dollar comparison, it might not be as big a return on investment. That's true.
But
so we're making 83 cents and we have more invested. But there's a good trade-off there. There's a good trade-off because we're making 83 cents, not quite the full dollar that the stock made, but not too far off, only 17 cents less. And we had a fraction of the investment. We have $625 instead of, 10,000 essentially.
I'll teach you something
that 100 shares would cost.
I'll teach you something here. If you buy this one at 6 cents right here, okay, if you buy this one at 6 cents and you get that $1 move to where 6 goes to 8 cents, congratulations on a nice percent return. I don't know what percent return that is, but what's 6 to 8? If you put in a 6 and you get 8, what's the percent return on that, Corey?
Yeah, so you made 2 on the 6 invested, so you'd basically make 33% if I'm doing that right in my head, right?
Okay.
So you made
congratulations, 30% return. How much is in your wallet? 2 pennies. So what that means is to really make any money, you'd have to do, if you did 1,000 shares, which is 10 contracts, okay, 1,000 times 2 is what? 2 cents. What is that decimal place if I move that?
Yeah,
over?
so
what is that, like 20 bucks?
You made, $20, right?
Okay, so you just put a freaking 1,000 contracts to make 20 lousy bucks. So the problem is you'd have to give yourself so much exposure and get so many contracts to make any kind of money. I mean, that's just stupid, right? That's just just not making any money.
In this example, you bought
great return, but there's no money in your wallet.
That's right. You bought your 10 contracts that control the 1,000 shares, but you only made $20. Whereas if you'd have put those same 10 contracts into the 95 strike calls, which are making 83 cents on the dollar or $83 per contract. Well, now $83 times my 10 contracts, and I've got $830 of profit. So remember, when you're only making 2 cents on the dollar, you're making $2 per contract.
Yeah.
Whereas the 95 calls are making $83 per contract.
I like that idea. I'd rather make $800 than 20. Okay, so whoops, I just screwed that up. So let's do that again, and that's fine because this is built-in review, and now I can spell right the right way. The right to buy XYZ at $95. There it is. And so let's look at the stock, and let's look at the option premium. Okay, and let's look at the stock. So let's say the stock is trading at $100.52, just like we did before. Why am I using 152? Because this is a real stock. These are real numbers. I didn't make these up. These are real. This is a real stock. XYZ isn't, but this is the numbers come from a real stock. Very, very important. So here at 152, the 95 strike, I'm going to pay $6.25 for my option. Okay, now it goes to 101.52. It makes that $1 move for me. Now, how much is my option worth, Corey? Let's see, that would be $7. And let's see, that'd be 8.
Yeah, so
2 and 6. So that's going to
705, right?
What is it?
705. 705, if I'm doing it right in my head.
705 makes sense to me, because if it was 75 cents, it'd be no. It's got to be. That's not right. Do that in my calculator. Maybe that's right. I can't do math.
So,
that should give
708.
Yeah, I was going to say 708.
Yeah, 708 is what it is.
So
sorry.
$7.08. If it goes to 99.52, we're going to subtract 83 cents from this. So 625 minus 83. What is that, Corey? You got your calculator?
542.
$5.42. Okay, right there, $5.42. So I would lose a little bit. Now let's look. Let's pull this off again. Let's get out of theater mode, and let's look. Let's get our calculator back up here. Let's look at our return on investment here. So if we get, if we got 83 cents out of it, 0.83, divided by the $6.25 it took to buy it, we get a 13% return. And you know what? A 13% in profit, our profit is 83 cents, which is a 13.28 return in profit right there. But let's take a picture of this. Watch, we're going to make some comparisons here so we can understand a little bit better about the difference of all these. Board. Okay, so let's really slide this over and let's look at all three that we did. Boom, boom, and boom. So here we did, we have three here that are really good. And this one right here would be called an at the money option. This would be one strike in the money option. And this was one strike out of the money option. If you don't know what at the money, in the money, and out of the money means, like the back of your hand at this point, go back, make sure you do your review, take the courses so you can be this advanced. Okay, so here's our profit on the out of the money at 27.32. Here's the profit on our at the money at 19.85, and here's the profit on the in the money at 13.28. And everyone would say, well, this is the one to do. Remember, I don't get as much money in my wallet when I do this, because here I only made about 20 cents. Here I made like 50 cents or whatever it was, and here I made 83 cents. So I make more money in my wallet over here. But let's look again at what happens at expiration. If this stock is at 101.52 at expiration, right, Corey? And I can buy it at 95. Okay, so at expiration, when all the time decay is gone, when all the time value is gone, let's look at the time value of this. Right now, the intrinsic value is $6.52 in intrinsic value, right?
Yep.
So the intrinsic value here is
$6.52
because I can buy at 95 and I can sell at 101.52 if that's where it is at expiration. Okay. The time value of this option right here is going to be, what's 708 minus 652? I'll trust you to do the calculator.
56 cents.
So I only have 56 cents of time value. So this is meat, man. This is really good. This is meat. And if I spent 625 and I got 652, I made money on this one. So this one, I had a profit at expiration if it stays there. Now, obviously, I probably want to sell it before expiration if I if I buy something at 625 and can get it at 708, maybe I just take my money and run or whatever. But at expiration, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me really emphasize this point, because this right here is exactly why when we buy an option, and we're talking about delta, and if you're trading for delta, you're trading for directional movement, you're trying to profit from a move in the stock. This one is so much safer from the standpoint of, if the stock were to kind of chop around, go sideways, which happens sometimes, doesn't go up quite as much as you want, maybe even goes down slightly or whatnot. When you think about, we can sell this option at expiration for its intrinsic value. Notice it didn't move much in our favor. When we bought this call option, we paid $6.25. The stock was at 152, so it only increased $1. But we didn't experience nearly as much time value decay, only 56 cents compared to the other two. So because of that, we can still sell our option for $6.52, which is more than what we paid at $6.25. We still end up profitable if the trade didn't work quite as well as we had hoped. We didn't get the big upside move. Whereas the other two have time decay and they end up in a worse spot. So this is kind of an important point of, when you buy an option directionally, there is some advantage to buying in the money. And we'll go through that when we get to strategy, but it's just kind of a good example that you get what you pay for. And this shows it perfectly.
A person might get up and teach a class like this, say, okay, here's the rule. Just buy your calls, one strike in the money. Okay, that's not a good, solid education. You say, look, why do I buy my calls one strike in the money? And you see where the sucker bet comes in is people want to go for the bigger percentage, but these have more what, Corey?
More intrinsic value.
Well, they have more risk.
Oh, pardon me. The out of the monies have more risk. The in the monies have more intrinsic value and less risk. Yes.
These have more risk. So even though my reward is greater, with greater reward comes more what, Corey? More risk.
With greater reward comes more risk. Exactly.
So, we did, and here's what's the thing though. This is also more money in my wallet. My wallet gets bigger. Yeah, on that one we made 2 cents. We get $20 going through the drive-through, so we can supersize our kids' value meal at McDonald's. Okay. Over here, I can make a car payment. Right over here, I can make a car payment if it goes the right way. So that's really good stuff, man. Really, really a good discussion on delta, and really understand those numbers. Let's go back in theater mode and extrapolate this, so you can see that as you go, well, we can just do it this way. As you go higher in the delta gets higher as you go further and further into the money, right? Meaning that if the price was at 105 and I can buy at 80, that's really in the money, right? It's going to charge me a lot for that. So the reason we really like one strike out of the money on the call side, okay, the reason we like one strike out of the money, or in the money,
in the money,
yeah, one strike in the money on the call side, is it gives us an excellent delta. We'd love to have a delta dollar per dollar. We would love that. But that's a lot more expensive than this one. And so we're trying to find the sweet spot. We're not trying to be too cheap, Goldilocks. We're not trying to be too expensive, Goldilocks. We want to be just right. And generally, if you were to go do the math on every one of them, generally, this is the one that's going to give us, number one, great leverage, because we're not going to pay $100.52 for stock. We're going to control it for $6.25, right? It's going to give us a delta of 83, which gives us more money in our pocket, more money in pocket. At the end, we're not going to have a great return with more, great return, but have no money. Yeah, I got a 27% return on my option. Oh yeah, well, how much money is in your pocket? $20. Okay, we're going to get more money in our pocket. And then number 3, we're going to have less risk than the out of the money options because, we're putting some meat in this thing. I mean, we're putting in, if it's at 152, we're putting in $4. We're putting in $4.48 of intrinsic value up front. So $4.48 of that is for meat. The rest of it's just for time and potential. So when you think about the time value in these, the time value is going down. This one is totally out of the money, right? And so we got 282 in time value. This one, all of these have no intrinsic value, only time value. Of this 625, okay, we have the ability to buy at 5.95, sell at 100. So the intrinsic value of this one is, what is that?
Is $5.52. Yep.
And the time value, what's 625 minus 552, Corey?
So 48 and 25 is 73 cents.
73 cents of time value. Okay, so look at this. Here I'm paying $2.82 in time value. Here I'm only paying 73 cents in time value, and I've got $5 in meat. The more money you have in time value, the higher risk there is. The more money you put in the intrinsic value, the lower risk there is. And so, and the better delta you get as well. You're going to get a better delta. So right here, I have a lot of good meat. I have a little bit of time for the potential. And what's nice is if it does go through the roof, I only had to pay 73 cents for that time value to buy the time for it to go through the roof. I got not a lot of nice meat in this thing. Because remember, if the option goes, if this thing goes down in value and the price goes to, let's say, $97, I still got $2 of intrinsic value in that sucker. I've still got some value in this sucker. But if I buy this one and it goes to $90, I'm dead. I'm dead in the water. So, watch this over and over again. Make sure you get it. We won't worry about the put side right now because the concept is the same. Okay, the concept is the same. It just goes the other way. Okay, maybe we should do one. Should we do one, Corey? Maybe on the put side. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do a quick example. Yeah,
let's just do one here. Let's just do one on this side right here. Okay, so let's say you buy this put, and the stock again at 102, and your premium, got away from my mic there, and your premium of the option, your put premium is 227. Okay, if this, and we're going to get 44 cents. So if this thing were to drop to 99.52, right? If this thing were to drop to 99.52, we're going to get 44 cents right. We're going to get 44 cents for this option, 44 cents. So
your option's now worth 271.
Well, let's see. It started out 227.
Oh, sorry. 271.
$2.71. So I made some money on this. Okay, I made some money on this. But if I go deeper into the money, I'm going to pay more, $5.38. The stock's at 152. Now, if the stock drops to 99.52, that $1 move, since it's a put, I'm going to make money. Now I'm going to make 73 cents, which would be darn near $6.
Yeah, 611 would be your option value.
611.
Yep.
$6.11. So on this one, I made 44 cents, but on this one, I made 73 cents. This puts more money in my pocket. This has more intrinsic value because it's a put side. If I have the right to sell it at 105 and it's at 99, I'm in really good shape.
Yeah.
So practice. Now, one of the things you could do is to take a picture of this or go find any option chain would be even better. Go find any option chain and kind of do what we just did with it. I know it's a lot of work, but I asked you guys, would this be fun for you? Would this be fun to do? And just think, once you did this, once you got a handle on this pretty fast, wouldn't that be a good feeling, right? Wouldn't that be a good feeling to say, I'm really understanding this delta better than I have ever before. And I'm getting a deeper, richer foundation as I go across. So there you go. Okay, let's look at this. So the deeper in the money, the higher the delta, right? Here's the at the money options, right? This is on calls. These are, two different stocks right here just to compare. Maybe the last one's XYZ. Let's say this one is ABC stock, and this is Acme Corporation, maybe, two different stocks. So notice, though, that the reason we care is I said, each stock has a different personality, right? Each stock has a different personality. This one, we have to go 5 strikes up, and we still haven't gotten to $1 yet. This one, we only went 3 strikes up, and we're at a full dollar per dollar exchange. So each stock has a different personality, and the delta tells us how sensitive this particular stock is to a $1, or this particular option is to a $1 move in this stock. This one tells us, $1 stock. Here, a $1 move will give you 50 cents. Here, a $1 move will give you 56. One strike out of the money, a $1 move, give you 72. Here, it'll give you 83. So this can really help us. I hope you can see why you would absolutely want to know this before you start messing around with actually buying puts and calls. Any comments on this, Corey?
Yeah, I think this is a great example of different sensitivity. So just going 1 strike in the money isn't always going to have the same delta amount. It's gonna work the same way in that usually the at the monies are around 50 deltas, and then the further you go in the money, it's higher than 50, and the further you go out of the money, it's lower than 50 as a general rule. But it won't. Notice in the one example, 72 cents, the other example, 83 cents, and so again, every stock has its own sensitivity to every option. Every stock option has its own sensitivity and has its own delta specific to that option.
When you buy a stock, you want to have an entry point, an exit point, and a target. In other words, the target is what I look at first, because if hitting the target can't achieve my goals, then why even mess with it? Does that make sense? If you don't know, look, why would you ever get into an investment without a good idea of what you were going to get out of it? Let me say it again. Why would you ever get an investment without a really good idea of what you thought would get out of it? And so delta really helps us predict, okay, well, what will this option do if the stock does a $1 move? It helps me know what that's going to be before I start to trade it, before I get into this. I want to know what the target is. I also want to know what my exit is. Well, with stock, it's easy because I just have a stock price. But with options, it's a little more ambiguous, a little bit harder to tell where this thing might go. So it really, really helps, right, Corey?
It does, no doubt about it.
Here we have, this is pretty cool. Watch what happens with this, and this will be our final little lesson on this. Good class. Is right here we have a 50 delta for an at the money. So on this side is the underlying stock. We're going at $17 a share right now. We think that it can hit 22, okay, and we could get a 29% gain. If it goes bankrupt, we're going to risk $17 on the stock. The option potential would look more like this, because if this stock goes below 17, below this line, where our strike price is, eventually our option could be worthless. Okay, but no matter what happens,
and importantly, And importantly, all you can lose is what you pay for the call.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas the stock can go unlimited. So it's got that nice slope to it on the loss side because you'll lose initially, but then it'll just be worthless, So if you pay 69 cents for this call option as we're showing, that's all you can lose in it. That's your limitation.
So what I've put in right here is this is the dollar move. Dollar move. Okay, this is a dollar move. I should write that more lately. This is a dollar move. In other words, I'm expecting this to go from 17, right? $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6. So up to maybe 23, right? So let's look at how this corresponds to a $0 move, to a $1 move at expiration, $2 move, $3 move, $4 move, $5 move. Does that make sense? I'm just looking at the dollar move. So watch this. Let's look at what happens with each dollar move. If I'm at a 50 delta, okay, watch this, and I wake up in the next morning, and I have a $1 move in that stock. In other words, now the stock is trading at $18. Over here, I've made $1. Over here, I will have made how much, Corey? 50 cents.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Cents. So watch what happens here. As time goes on. This is kind of cool, actually. Okay. Now, the next morning I wake up, and since the stock now is trading at $18, okay, so we'll just call this day one. Since the stock is trading at $18, I can still buy it at $17. So actually, I bought an at-the-money option, but on the next day, since I've had a $1 move, now I'm what? $1 in the money. So what used to be an at-the-money option is now become a in-the-money option that I own, right? Okay, now watch this. Okay, we go another day here. Now the stock is at $19. Now I'm what? Two strikes in the money.
Two strikes in the money.
My $17 strike. Now I look at the option chain today and say, and guess what? In the next dollar move, I'll make what? 88 cents. 88 cents. Okay, I wake up in the morning. Look at this. Now I'm what? I've gone from being at the money to $3 in the money because now it's at $20. Isn't that right?
Yep.
And what am I going to make on this dollar move?
Now you're at 94 cents delta.
Right? And so that's why I get this exponential look on this side and only a linear look on this side. Because this is just always going to be $1, $1, $1, $1. This isn't going to start at $1. It's going to move 50 cents on the first dollar, 72 cents then, 84 cents then, 94 cents then. I wake up in the morning. Look, I wake up in the morning. Now this sucker is 5 strikes in the money. Isn't that right? I'm 4 strikes in the money right now. My next move will be $95, right? I wake up the morning next day, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Pretty soon I'm getting $1 per dollar, and this will turn linear just like this one will. So when you look at the profit of an option, first it's gonna be nice because it will go this way in terms of loss. Here I can lose everything. Here I can only lose my 69-cent premium. Here I can lose all $17. Here I can only lose 69 cents. It starts to curve. It starts to curve because I'm at 50, 72, 80, 94. Pretty soon I'll get to dollar per dollar, and it will go linear just like this one right here. So that gives you an idea of how the next day, once you get in the money, man, these things start to really look nice, and you get safer and safer and safer. The further in the money you get, the more confident and less risk you'll have if it goes initially in the direction you want. Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I would just say, you hit the points. Your delta is changing. It's actually one of the things we're going to talk about as we continue on with other Greeks, because that delta changing is what we call gamma. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, gamma, we'll get to that, is the rate that this gets here. For example, let's just go ahead and talk about it right now. You'll see that this right here gets to $1 really fast. This gets to $1 really slow. So which one has the higher gamma, Corey? The one on
the
A
one with the
or the one on
the
B?
faster the one that gets to one faster. It has a bigger jump in delta, in other words. And the bigger the delta change, the higher the gamma, in other words.
We'll get to that. Went out of theater mode there. Let's get back in theater mode. So that's delta. So let's do a little wrap on this really good lesson. Okay, we see that jump. You took a lot of work to make that do that. I'll just tell you right now. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is there's a correlation of probability. We kind of touched on this, but actually you can almost get this and do a poor man's percentage, almost. In other words, if I look at the 85 and it's at 100 now, based on how the stock moves, it's almost a sure thing, not 100% here, but it's almost a sure thing that the stock will be above 85 at expiration. About a 97% chance it'll be above 90 at expiration. About an 83% chance it'll be above 95. About a 56% chance it'll be above 100. Only a 26% chance it'll get to 105. Only a 10% chance it'll get to 110. Only a 4% chance it'll get to 115. Only a 2% chance it'll get to 120. This is why this is the what? This is the lottery ticket. This is the least likely to become valuable at expiration. Now, that's not exactly true. Okay, I mean, it might vary a little bit. It's certainly not guaranteed because this is just based on previous amusement. Look, this stock goes bankrupt or has a scandal, all bets are off, right? All bets are off. We're just saying based on its previous movement, based on its personality today, you can get a pretty good idea of where it goes. And that makes sense. It's a 50-50 chance. Look, it's at 152. It could go up. There's 50% chance it could go up. It could go down. 50% chance it could go down, right? 50-50.
Yeah, and notice that the 100 call has just slightly more than 50% chance, and the 100 strike put over there has just slightly less. Why is that? Well, the 100 call is slightly in the money, right? Yep. And so, in other words, that since the stock's already above 100, the call has a better probability of finishing there, whereas the put has a slightly lower chance. But think of how cool this is in terms of being able to pull up an option chain. And you can ask yourself, well, what's the probability that this option will be in the money at expiration? And the delta gives you an answer. So if I want to say, hey, Andy, what's the probability that this stock's going to be above 95 come expiration? He can go to this option chain and he can say, well, there's about an 83% chance that this stock's going to finish above 95 on expiration.
This is why this is cool. This is why this is a safer option than this one. It'd be tougher to lose all my money in this one than it would be in this one, right? If you say, what are the chances of this getting to 120? What are the chances of it getting to 120? About 2%. What are the chances of it falling to 80? About 1%. Okay, it's not very likely. So these are lottery tickets right here. These are lottery tickets.
That's right.
And that's why they're cheap. That's why they're cheap. But when we looked at the call side, if we go here and we buy this one, 83% chance this stock does not go below 95. That's a good feeling for us from a safety standpoint, right? Over here,
that's
right? 88% chance this stock doesn't get up to 110. So when we buy our options, we like deltas of 60, don't we? And we like to go one strike into the money. So I like to be above 60 when I buy an option, if I can be. If I'm just going to go long call, we'll get into that when we get into specific strategies. But hopefully we got a little thing on delta. Look, delta helps us estimate how much an option premium will change. Delta is relative to the next $1 move in the stock. Delta is always between $0 and $1 for calls, $0 and $1 for puts. It's never going to be more than $1. That's the max it can be because, pretty soon it's just moving dollar per dollar. A stock can't go more than $1 in a $1 move, right? It's either going to go from 100 to 101 to 102. That's the most it can move in $1. Well, that would, of course, put the constraint that the option couldn't move more than one. Remember, it's an orange and an orange tree. Delta gets larger as an option goes deeper into the money, and delta can give you a rough idea of the probability of expiration. Fabulous class on Delta and
Awesome
Greeks.
stuff.
Corey, you're invaluable. Absolutely awesome. You guys, the next one we'll talk about is going to be theta and time decay. Again, if you didn't understand everything in this class, there's two things. You either need to go back and brush up and go through things like strike prices, in the money, out of the money, intrinsic value. All that stuff is taught in the 4 pillars of investing. So if you're a little rusty, go back and review that. And then if you've done that and you're just fuzzy on some of the new stuff, review this over and over again. Keep showing up to Mentor Club. You're going to be in awesome shape. Any last words, Corey, before we move on to
love it.
theta?
Love it. Great job, everyone.
Great class. Great job. Thank you.